Good evening, everyone. Chanukah Sameach, happy Chanukah. This week's parsha is Parshas Miketz, Tavshin Pei Beis. I'd like to dedicate tonight's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shlomis Rabinowitz, Shlomis Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. And we're going to, for tonight's Drasha, combine the parsha together with Chanukah. Now, it's interesting to note that Chanukah always falls out. Chanukah always falls out during the parshias of Vayeshev, Miketz, and Vayigash. Typically, Shabbos Chanukah is going to fall out on one of these Shabbos, primarily Miketz. But it could be Vayeshev, it could be Vayigash, it could be two Shabbos Chanukahs. But Chanukah will be read when we read about the story of Yosef. The fact that Yosef's story coincides with Chanukah is not a coincidence, because we have a tradition that any time a Shabbos anytime a parsha falls or coincides with a holiday, an event, there's a connection. It's not a coincidence. There's a connection between the two. So what connection is there between Yosef's story and Chanukah? And the answer that we're going to offer starts off with a principle, Maisa Avos Simul Labanim. What happened to the fathers is a sign for the children. When we learn about the lives of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we're actually looking through a window of our future. What happens to our patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, what happened to them, is a window to what will happen to their descendants. And it's a window to what will happen to the descendants in the future. It becomes for the descendants something to look back at, to learn from how the patriarchs dealt with it, how they should deal with it. And what we see by the Avos, by Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, lets us know who their descendants are, what they're made of. Because the Avos, the fathers and the mothers, inculcated their descendants with a spiritual DNA, with a spiritual genes that carries on throughout the Jewish people for all generations. So it has this threefold purpose. Again, it's a window into the future. As a window into the future, it allows the descendants to look back at what happened to their ancestors and to follow their example. And as I said, it also gives us a chance of knowing who we are, what we're made of, what our strengths are. And we know a rule is that the fathers and the mothers, there are three fathers and four mothers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. There are so many great people who follow Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe, David. But they are not of us. They are not fathers. They are not the fathers of the Jewish people. We have three fathers and three mothers of the Jewish people. They are the ones who have molded us. They are the ones who are those who have blazed the trail for us for the future. But they went through, they blazed the trail for us. As we said, they set the tone, they set the example, they set who we are. The commentaries point out that Yosef is somewhere in between. Yosef, to some degree, is like one of the Avos, like one of the fathers. And he also belongs to the next generation, the Shvatim, the tribes, that were the ancestor, the foundation of the tribes of Israel. But Yosef, in some degree, was also like Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that is seen by the fact that Yosef is the only one of Yaakov's children whose death is mentioned in the book of Bereshis. Parshas Vayechi, the last parsha in Bereshis, in the book of Bereshis, ends with Yosef's death. No other brothers, their death is not mentioned in Bereshis. In the beginning of Shmos, it enumerates the sons of Yaakov who came down with him to Egypt, and it says, and that entire generation died out. And it mentions Yosef there too. So the fact that Yosef's death is mentioned at the end of Bereshis, and he's mentioned together with other tribes and their death in the book of Shmos, the beginning of Shmos, means that Yosef was on both sides. Yosef, to some degree, was like the fathers, and in some ways, like the sons, like the Shvatim, like the tribes. And if that is so, that means that Yosef also is part of the Maisa of Asim Labanim. Yosef is also part of what happened to him, and what he did blazed the trail for all of the Jewish people. And if so, we can suggest that the connection between Yosef and Hanukkah is that in some way Yosef blazed the trail for the Hashmonaim, for the Maccabim, who brought about the miracle of Hanukkah. There's a connection between the two. Yosef's life, what Yosef did, is what gave the strength to the Maccabim, to the Hashmonaim, to do what they did. And we can explain that in the following way. If we look at Yosef, or actually, let's go back. We have to go back to, we know that the story of Hanukkah deals with the Yavanim, the Greeks, or the Syrian Greeks, of how after Alexander the Great conquered Eretz Yisrael, how Greek culture began taking influence within the Jewish people and caused many Jews to actually abandon Torah, to abandon Judaism, and to join the Greek religion and culture. They were called Hellenists. And they were making inroads in the Jewish people for many years. And eventually the Syrian Greek rulership began forcing the Jewish people by decree to abandon Judaism or else die. But the story of Hanukkah begins with the Greek influence making inroads in the Jewish people, inroads that actually took the Jewish people away from Torah and from Yiddishkeit. Now, the ancestor of the Greeks was Yefes. Yefes was one of the sons of Noach. Noach had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Yefes. And Yaakov blessed Yefes with the following blessing: Yaf Elokim leYefes v'yishkan bo Shem, which means God should spread Yefes, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. But the name Yefes also has in it the word Yafeh, which means beautiful, beauty. And that actually is and in that sense, the translation is that Yaf Elokim leYefes, the beauty that God gives to Yefes, that should dwell in the tents of Shem. Shem is the ancestor of the Jewish people. The beauty of Yefes should dwell in the tents of Shem. The beauty of Yefes manifests itself in the Greeks. The Greeks were very into beauty. But that beauty really was meant to be a beauty that would dwell in the tents of Shem. The beauty of Yefes was meant to enhance the beauty of Shem. Shem, the ancestor of the Jewish people, the ancestor of the people to whom the Torah was given, those are the tents of Shem. And the beauty of Yefes was meant to dwell in the tents of Shem. It was meant to enhance the Torah. It was meant to be used in a sanctified way, in a holy way, in a godly way. As a matter of fact, one of the few languages a Torah may be written in, a regular kosher Sefer Torah may be written in ancient Greek. That's this idea. Yefes, what is part of Yefes, what is part of Yefes, which is ancient Greece, should dwell in the tents of Shem. You can write a Torah out of that Greek, ancient Greek language. Yefes's beauty, which again was manifest in the Greeks, was meant to be in partnership with Shem. It was meant to be in partnership with Torah. That's what it was meant to be. But the Greeks took that beauty and made it an ends unto itself, a goal unto itself. Beauty is the epitome. When you look at beauty just as something physical, something on the surface beauty, that is the epitome of the physical. The concept of beauty in Torah is meant that there should be a beautiful appearance that's meant to be the beautiful appearance for the spiritual, for the holy. It's meant to be a partnership. You know, it's interesting. Yosef is described in Parshas Vayeshev in a way that no other man is described. There are women described that way. Rivka is described, her beauty is described as Yefei Toar Yefei Mara, beauty of Yefei Toar, beauty of form, and beauty of appearance. That is how Rivka is described. That's how Rachel is described. Sarah is called Ishi Yafas Mareh, a woman of beautiful appearance. Doesn't say Yefei Toar. Yosef is described in last week's parasha. Yosef Hayah Yefei Toar Yefei Mareh, beauty of appearance, beauty of form, beauty of appearance. That description, actually, some commentaries point out, is not just meant to be a physical beauty. The beauty of form and the beauty of appearance means that there's an inner beauty, there's the beauty of the neshama, which manifests itself in a beauty in the physical. So in essence, it represents that concept of the combination of a beautiful appearance and a beautiful inner essence. They go together. That was Yosef. Yosef had a beautiful appearance, but his beautiful appearance was really the outer layer of a beautiful inside coming out. So the Greeks' beauty was meant to be a beauty that was supposed to enhance the holy, but they made it unto a goal to itself. Because in the Greek culture, the main thing was the glorification of the physical, which manifests itself in physical beauty. It also manifests itself in great wisdom, in philosophy, and great wisdom. But it was all about enhancing the physical. It was all about the glorification of the physical. The Greek culture did not believe in the holy. It didn't believe in the spiritual. It didn't believe in the neshama. That didn't exist. What existed was philosophy, wisdom, a philosophy that professed at least a proper way of behavior. But it wasn't seen as holy. It wasn't seen as divine. It wasn't seen as godly. It was seen as it was worshipped unto itself. Greek mythology, the Greek gods, are nothing more than human beings with their foibles turned into deities. Because the physical, the natural, that was the epitome of Greece, and that is what they worshipped, and that is what they were always focused on in building that up. In Torah is meant to take the physical and sanctify it. You can either abuse it, there's physical beauty, but it needs to be infused with holiness. That is what Torah is about, and the Greeks didn't believe in that. And the Greeks were the first ones to make the Jewish people, to cause them to try to get them to assimilate. Haman, the evil Haman in the Purim story, wanted to destroy us. Avram Avinu believed in God, and people wanted to destroy him because he believed in God. He didn't believe in their idols. He didn't believe in their pagan worship. The Egyptians wanted to control us. Why did they control us? They were looking to assimilate us. They wanted to control us, but to enslave us. Matter of fact, we know from Drasha that when Jewish people started becoming Egyptian-like, the Egyptians didn't like them. But the Greeks wanted us to assimilate. They wanted us to become them. And they first did it voluntarily, and they succeeded to a large degree, and then they turned it into force. But the Greeks were the first ones to try to get us to assimilate. And the Maccabim, the Hashmonaim, their battle was a battle against assimilation. It was a battle in which they said, we're not going to give up our godliness. We're not going to give up our connection to Hashem. We're not going to give it up, and we're going to fight for it until Hashem actually saved them for their dedication. But this is what the Hashmonaim had to face. They were facing the first onslaught of assimilation, and a very strong and powerful one. One that actually came to a point that they were going to force them into it. They had to find the strength to be able to fight against that assimilation to the utmost, and to pull the Jewish people away from that assimilation back into the belief of Torah, back into being godly. Let's take a look at the life of Yosef. What did Yosef face when he came down to Egypt? We read in last week's parasha how Yosef was very handsome, very good looking, and his wife's master took a liking to him. She clearly was definitely, she had a connection and attraction to his beauty. And she tried to seduce him. She was telling him, come over to me. I'm going to try to kill him. Come over to me. Come to me. Partake in my life. And Yosef wouldn't allow that. Yosef wouldn't allow himself. Yosef didn't let his physical appearance, his surface beauty, become take control over him and let it take advantage of him. Yosef understood what his true inner holy essence was, and he refused to fall into that seduction. He refused to give into that form of assimilation. And then what happens to Yosef? He becomes the viceroy of Egypt. He now becomes the de facto ruler of Egypt. Egypt was known to be a decadent, immoral society. It was the richest society. It was the most powerful society. And it was an extremely immoral society. And now Yosef is the king there. And Yosef is dressed like an Egyptian. And he dresses his children like Egyptians. But within all that, Yosef retains, he's Yosef HaTzadik. He's Yosef the righteous. He remains the same Yosef that he always was. And not only that, he raises two children, Ephraim and Manasseh, who become parts of the tribes of Israel. This is all happening in Egypt. Yosef also had that challenge of assimilation. And what kind of greater challenge than becoming the king and the ruler of the country? What greater challenge is there to becoming assimilated into that kind of into the culture of that country? And Yosef, it makes no difference to him. It's irrelevant. Even being the king, even dressed like an Egyptian, and his children dressed like Egyptians. Everything is holy. They don't assimilate. They remain true and loyal, dedicated Jews through and through. That was the trail that Yosef blazed. Yosef had to deal with the onslaught of assimilation, and he rejected it. He fought it back. He said, I am staying who I am meant to be. I am a descendant of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I am part of the eternal Jewish people. That's who I am, and that's who I will remain, no matter what. No matter what kind of influences and powers are trying to convince me to come over and join them. When Yosef did that, Yosef inculcated that power into the Jewish people. The power to fight off assimilation. The power to remain dedicated, be a dedicated Jew under all circumstances. That was what he put into the Jewish people. And it was that strength that although many Jewish people abandoned, they ignored it, they assimilated, there were a group of Kohanim, the Hashmonaim, who said, we're not going to allow that to happen. And we're going to fight against it, and we're going to fight against that assimilation to bring God back into our midst. We read the story of Yosef during Hanukkah because Yosef set the tone. Yosef is the one that gave the strength within the Jewish people to find that strength within them, to remain dedicated and loyal to Hashem, even against the strongest forces of assimilation. That's where the Kohanim got their strength from. That's where the Hashmonaim got their strength from. It's in them. It's part of them. It's part of who they are, because Yosef put that into the Jewish people. That is why we read. That could be a reason as to why we read the story of Yosef during Hanukkah. And it's really an important lesson for all of us. Because, sure, there are terrible... We face assimilation as a people in a terrible way. So many of our brothers and sisters have become assimilated. And we have to do our best to show them the beauty of Judaism, the beauty of Torah, so that they should come back to their roots, come back to their essence. But we also face assimilation in smaller ways. When we allow the destructive influences of the society that we're in become part of who we are, even as we keep Torah and we keep mitzvahs. But we still allow those negative influences to become part of who we are. That's assimilation. That's a level of assimilation. And Hanukkah teaches us that we have to be strong. Hanukkah teaches us that we have to follow the example of the Chashmonaim and not allow the influences of assimilation to overrun us and to destroy us, but rather to be strong and to be loyal under all circumstances. Where did the Kohanim get that power? From where do we get that power? We got it from Yosef. It's part of who we are. It's part of our heritage. It's part of our legacy. It's part of who we are. We have it in us. And we should always believe and take the example of the Chashmonaim that no matter how much the odds are against us to fight off assimilation, we can do it because the odds that Yosef faced were just as bad. One man on his own in Egypt, the king of Egypt, and he remained faithful. That strength was the strength that was given to the Chashmonaim. That's the strength that we have all been given, we've all been endowed with. And that's what Hanukkah has to remind us. That's what we have to take out of Hanukkah. That no matter where we are, what situation we're in, we shouldn't put ourselves in situations of challenge where we can be influenced in a negative way. But sometimes we can't escape it. It's there. Sometimes it's there on a greater level, on a smaller level, but it's there. And Hanukkah tells us that we have the power to fight that off. And the story of Yosef tells us that it's part of who we are. It's in us. It's the strength that we have. And it's when we light the Hanukkah candles and we see those beautiful burning lights, that beautiful energy, that's the energy that tells us that we have that energy and strength to remain loyal Jews, loyal to the Torah, loyal to Hashem, loyal to Kedusha, to sanctity under all circumstances. And may the Hanukkah lights give us that strength and give us that inspiration so that we remain loyal to Hashem and merit miracles as our ancestors in Hanukkah did. Have a wonderful Hanukkah and a wonderful Shabbos. All the best.